Bet you fuckers didn't expect to see me this soon, but here I am. I'm back. Hello everyone, SDSman here. That's me. That's who I am. You all know me well. I have a bag of M&Ms that I'm going to be eating during this video. I hope this noise isn't too annoying. So, some of you are here to get my reactions to Breaking Bad Season 4, and that's wonderful. But I have a few things to admit to you guys. Three things specifically that I'm going to get to. Number one is I have an addiction, and that addiction is Breaking Bad. Because some of you probably know, I made this video for Season 3 a couple of weeks ago. At this point when this would be uploaded, and I said I'll be back in like a month, maybe longer. It's gonna be a while because of the holidays and stuff. So I released the Season 3 reaction video, and I released it, and the day after I finished Season 4. I watched Season 4 in like 3 days because I recorded that video about a week before I released it, and then in that week, 3 days that week, I started Season 4 and I finished Season 4. Because I just couldn't stop. God, I could not stop. So that's why this video is coming out sooner. The other point I want to bring up is that this video is completely not scripted. And some of you may say, well, SDS man, of course, these videos are never not scripted. I mean, you always just kind of ramble and talk about, what you like and not you didn't like about the season and kind of analyze it, give your reaction and review. And that's true. I never have a script for these videos. But I also don't have any notes. And usually for these videos, I have about 2 to 4 pages of notes, characters, themes I want to talk about. We're not doing it today. I have no notes in front of me. I just have a camera and a mic. This is going to be even more free flow than usual. And the third thing I want to bring up, sort of a, add-on to that free flow nature, is that because I have no notes, I'm not going to be able to talk about everything I want to talk about this season because so much happened, and I really was like, I want to kind of touch on everything upon this season, and then I realized that would be like an hour and a half, maybe 2-hour video for real, because I have so much I want to say. Even after watching this for 3 days, I had a hard time talking about it with my friends and my family who watched the show too, or seen the show I should say, already watched it, and I had a hard time talking about it because I was like, I don't even remember what happened, and not because I forgot, but just there's so much to analyze. Like, there's so much there in Season 4. It's definitely the most packed season by far. So because of that, I'm actually not going to be talking about that many things. I'm probably going to be talking about a lot of generalities to start off, and then I'm going to just go straight onto it, like going in depth on a few scenes, a few moments, a few episodes that I really want to talk about. That being said, I'm going to start with the things I didn't like this season, and there was only one sort of problem, issue I had with this season. It's not necessarily related to pacing. What it is related to is a plot line, and that is a Skyler plot line this season. And I like Skyler as a character, and I don't think her plot line is unnecessary. I don't even think it's bad. I just think that it sometimes is presented a little bit too long. What I mean by this is Skyler this season, her whole plot line is basically getting the car wash, right, buying it, figuring out the logistics of it, and dealing with Ted and the IRS and his money laundering, or not money laundering, but his scamming, if you will. And I found all of that fine. The problem is that if you time those scenes, like if you take a timer and time those scenes, they're probably about an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes of the season, which is a good chunk. It's like almost an entire episode of it, maybe even longer than that, maybe like 2 hours. And it just sometimes it feels a little bit unnecessary. And some of the scenes I liked. I was surprised to see Bill Burr pop up this season, but the scene with him and the big boy where Ted, he doesn't die, does he? He bangs his head. Something happens to him. I don't know. It wasn't really clear. That scene was awesome. I loved that scene. It was really well done. And there were a lot of fun comedic timings and moments that I enjoyed. But overall, that plot line just kind of dragged a bit. It felt like it didn't really need to be there. And it wasn't because it wasn't action-packed, because I don't give a fuck about that. It was just that it was just, it didn't really seem like to serve a thematic purpose. Or it did, but it didn't need to be dragged on that long, right? Like it could have, it stayed its welcome a little too long. I really like these M&Ms, they're really good. So now let's talk about everything I liked about this season, and that's like everything else. Yeah. So character-wise, I guess I'll kind of go down the line. I'm gonna hang on to Walt, because I think his character can be summarized in one episode in one scene, and I'm gonna talk about that in a second. Or maybe a few episodes and a few scenes, obviously, but I'll talk about that in a second. Starting off with Jesse, I actually really love what they did with Jesse this season. I think this is probably his best handled season yet. So the first half of the season, Jesse is sort of a washed up party animal, drug addict, depressing fucker. Basically, the dude just sits in his house all day. He basically creates a crack party house where he has tons of people just hanging out, partying, living, sleeping in his house. He's there going to work, partying, and he's doing this clearly because of how numb he is feeling, and he's sort of trying to get some sort of satisfaction in his life, some sort of thing to ill the numbness and ill the sort of dreary nature of life that he just cannot deal with. And it's kind of sad. But what I really like is this hole in his life actually gets filled, but in a way maybe you wouldn't expect. Basically, Jesse, which seems like a character that doesn't really fit into Gus's sort of system, is manipulated into it. We see him start going on these sort of fun little side missions that are sometimes staged, sometimes real. And then eventually Gus begins to sort of manipulate him and use him and even rely on him at some points, but definitely manipulate and use him. And, you know, with the cartel and dealing with all sorts of other problematic, you know, issues, getting Gus's revenge. I'll talk about Gus in a second, but Jesse sort of goes through this interesting arc this season, and what I really like is we see Gus manipulating Jesse. At the end, we assume that it's Gus manipulating Jesse with his girlfriend's kid's illness, but then when we find out it's Walt, it's kind of like shocking, because it's like, oh shit, we thought Gus was manipulating, but the true manipulating sort of factor here is Walt. It's a great contrast, because we're like, clearly Walt is not as evil or as manipulative as Gus is, but then we learn that it's sort of a transition. He is, and he sort of becomes like Gus in a weird way. And that relationship between the two is sort of converge at the very end, although obviously a much more sinister undertone. I don't really need to talk about Skylar. I talked about her plotline. I don't really have much to say about her, but I think Walt Jr. goes through a pretty cool arc in this season. We see him sort of start maybe relying on his father again, or trying to reignite that relationship. Really, his character can be summed up in that, not really with the car scene, although that's interesting, but with the one scene in his apartment, Walt's apartment, that is, and where he has a sort of monologue with Walt, where Walt calls him Jesse, which is obviously an interesting parallel there, and that's just a very simple explanation. Yeah, Walt views Jesse as his son, and his lives converging. Plotline from season 3. And like I said, in last video I said Walt was the only character that wasn't getting involved in Walt's life. I meant to say, I don't know if I said this right, but Walt Jr. is rather the only character that's not getting involved in Walt's life. And now we're kind of seeing maybe that line be broken. I'm very interested to see that. See how that sort of ends up, I guess. And of course, what's super interesting about Walt Jr. this season is, again, that monologue where he has a sort of speech where he's talking to his dad, and Walt is like, I'm sorry that, you know, I was drunk, and I'm sorry that I sort of let out all these feelings and emotions. And Walt Jr. is sort of like, no, like, I kind of wish you were more like that. Like, that was the first time in forever that I've seen you as you. You know, you've just been hiding under this mask and persona. I don't know who you are anymore. And this torn relationship between them, it was really heartfelt, and it gave Walt Jr. a lot of depth as a character. Which in the early part of the show I felt like he didn't really have, but now he really does. And I really love that monologue, and it definitely sums up Walt Jr.'s arc and purpose of this whole show, and how he acts as sort of a effect of Walt's breakdown, right? Like Walt shutting him out of his life emotionally, shutting everyone out of his life emotionally, and how that affects other people. And Walt Jr. really reveals that in a scene that I think is one of the best of the season. By the way, another scene I really liked, and I don't really know when to talk about this in this video, so I'm going to talk about it now. There's a scene where Walt is spinning a gun, and it keeps like landing on him. The gun keeps like landing when he spins it. I thought that was a cool metaphor about like maybe he can't escape death no matter what he does. It's he's always gonna. It's just he can't escape it. I don't know. I just feel like bringing that up. I'm going to talk about Walter White later. He's interesting, I know, but I'm actually going to talk about two characters sort of in one here, because their plot lines are connected, although one of them has more of a bigger role in the show than the other. But I'm going to talk about Hank and Marie. I almost said Skylar. Marie. My brain's a jumbled mess. Yeah, so Hank and Marie, I really like their relationship in the first half of the season, not because it's enjoyable to watch. It's quite painful, but Hank's sort of character arc carries over from the last season. His dependence on others and his sign of weakness just causes so much anger and hate to come out of him, and having any sort of vulnerability is just crushing for him. And we see that a lot this season, where he sort of lashes out at Marie. But what I find interesting is when there's males around him, he sort of, when there are masculine figures helping him, he doesn't necessarily get angry. He's just kind of like, thanks, man, for the help. Thanks so much help, brother. Like he's not afraid to show his weakness towards, masculine figures, just feminine figures, because he doesn't want to be viewed as sort of inferior. I guess he definitely has an inferior complex, which makes sense based off his character and his age. But yeah, I loved Hank this season, him sort of following the leads. And then Marie had a lot of interesting moments this season. That she had one episode where she was shoplifting, but stealing from houses and making up fake backstories, and it ultimately ends up biting her in the ass. But I really liked that. I really found that interesting. And it's like where she gets thrills from, where she tries to get enjoyment. She's trying to sort of escape Hank life, and she's kind of almost living out a bunch of her fantasies in a weird way. And she's going back to stealing, which is stuff she's done in the past, but she's sort of like living out these fantasies because she's clearly unhappy where she is in her life and where Hank is in her life. And I find that really interesting too. Yeah, I did a good job with Hank and Marie. Again, Hank sort of solving the case here. He follows a lot of connections that make a lot of sense, and then he ultimately, I think, is set up at the end of the season to be the main target for Walt. Now that Gus is dead, I think it's going to be a Hank and Walt showdown. I maybe not like a physical battle. I just think like it's going to be like that the two worlds colliding. I'm very interested to see if that happens. And there's some other characters. Gus is probably more fleshed out than ever before. I mean, his story ends here, of course, but I think they do a really good job showing his backstory, showing his motivation. Obviously, the scene of him getting revenge, how he's willing to almost sacrifice himself for that, and of course his death, and how his downfall is led by him sort of being naive and sort of his passion, right? Like his hate and his thirst for revenge sort of leads to his death. And his death scene, I can see it if a lot of people think it's really dumb, how how he walks out. It's not realistic, but this show is very cartoony at times, and it's not always realistic. I mean, two planes crashing isn't really realistic, but what I really like is I like that scene. It very cartoonish. It fit the mood very well. But what I really liked is the last thing Gus does when he steps out, even though his fucking half his face is gone, is he adjusts his tie a little bit, because he's all about that presentation. He's all about how he presents himself to others, his external presentation. And that's how he got away with this for so long, is he had such a very, very friendly, outgoing exterior, despite an interior that was pretty scary. But I really like that. And him sort of adjusting his tie is like one last... make sure his face is blown off, kind of ironic. Make sure I look good, because I don't want people to think, I'm shady, like having that exterior is so important to him. I thought that was really cool, having that be the sort of the final last thing that he does. I thought that was really clever. Yeah, and there's a lot of character interactions here. I can't talk about all of them, and maybe I'll do a huge Breaking Bad discussion, maybe with some of you guys or some of my friends or something, for like 2 or 3 hours, because there's a lot of scenes in this season I want to talk about. Maybe I'll dissect more as we go on. I just don't have time to really talk about so many of the relationships. You know, that the moment between Jesse and Walt at the end of the season, and the last episode, that the conversation is super layered and important, and they have a lot of moments, like with the gun to Walt's head, a lot of great moments. But so I kind of want to talk about 2 things, and they both revolve around Walt. And again, Walt has a lot of things to dissect that he does this season, but there's 2 specific scenes, or I guess 2 specific factors of his character that I really want to talk about. And number 1 is what is revealed at the end with the flowers. So it's revealed at the end that Walt is the one that poisoned Brock, Jesse's girlfriend's kid. And at first it's like, no, he would never do that. Gus did it. There's even a scene where it's like, you think I did it, shoot me now. And that's obviously his master manipulation at work. And it's such a cool reveal because it's a twist reveal that wouldn't make sense if the writing and development of his character wasn't so damn good, but you can see why he did it. You can see the moment where he saw him. Jesse even breaks it down. He's like, you saw him. As an audience, you don't want to believe the protagonist did this, or the main character, the guy you've been spending time with. You want to believe it's Gus. So we kind of just naturally believe it's Gus. Like, of course Gus did it. But then, of course, Jesse sort of had it right the whole time, and it's sort of like, wow. Like, we're like, Jesse, no, he didn't do it, but wow. Like, what a trick. What a great trick. In a way, Walt sort of manipulated us, right? Like, it's like we see Walt manipulate so many people throughout the show, and we see him finally manipulate us. Yeah. Fuck you, Walt. But yeah, obviously that reveal is really clever. I really like how they built up to it, and I just really like how it just goes to show where Walt is now, what he's willing to do to stay in the business. And obviously him and Jesse burning the lab, he is willing to get rid of everything if it means keeping Jesse, you know, the emotional attachment, and keeping a hold of some sort of power. And that's what he sort of gains here. He does what he has to do, and the show is just so smart in revealing that, because now I'm so excited to go back and watch the hints and foreshadowing of him doing that. It's really clever. And the last thing I want to talk about, and I know it's like, what do you mean last thing you want to talk about? There's so much to talk about this season. But of course, I can't say it again. Cinematography, colors, all there. I'm not even going to talk about that this season because they're all there. The cinematography, the colors, and this one thing I'm going to talk about involves cinematography, but they're all there again. You know, they do a really good job with the colors again. Of course, they do cinematography, writing, all amazing acting. All that stuff that I've talked about before, and this is as good here. Also, something I really want to touch upon is the music. I think they did a better job with music this season. There was a couple scenes where the music was orchestrated really well and was done really well and used really well. So I actually liked how they handled music this season better. I have some specific examples in my head. I just don't feel like breaking them down right now because I really need to talk about this one scene. So coming into the show, I knew 2 things about the show. I knew The Fly, which was the episode last season, which is still at this point my favorite episode of the show. And my number 2 element or thing I knew about the show was the crawl space scene. So I've seen parts of the crawl space scene before, but seeing it now with all the context, the build-up, and everything sort of attached to it, I think it may be my favorite scene in all of television, like ever. I mean, like literally any scene in any television show, like of all time. Like if you took every scene of every show I've ever seen and lined them up next to each other, I think I'd pick this to be my favorite. So to break down this scene, this episode specifically, everything's falling apart on Walt. He's losing connection with Jesse. He's losing his power struggle, and he's losing the trust of Gus. He is paranoid about Gus going to kill him. He is paranoid about Hank discovering him, and his ultimate plan is, fuck it, I need to just take my money, become change an identity and leave. He's just so desperate. He's breaking down. Everything's falling apart around him. Sort of like a crawl space. Everything's closing in. It's tight. It's not. He's literally getting suffocated almost due to his own actions. And it's so satisfying watching everything from the last couple seasons finally crash down on Walt, and in a desperation tries to get all the money and do it in the crawl space. And then, it's learned that, hey, Skyler gave all the money to Ted to help him, get out of the IRS situation. The crawl space was being foreshadowed a couple seasons ago. I think it was season 2. We see him started cleaning out, and we see him used more. So this was definitely being built up to. But this scene where Walt is in the crawl space, Skyler breaks the news, and all he does is laugh. And the laugh seems less of a, response as more of almost like a tick, almost like a just natural response, a tick that he can't stop. He sort of just laughs uncontrollably, and Skyler has looking down at him has this look of fear, like this is a broken man, like this is a man who's lost everything. This is a man who is just gone insane, and this is his breaking point. I think he's changed after this. He never is the same. I think this is his final breaking point where he just loses his goddamn mind. And even more beyond that, what I really like is they bring back this laugh in the next episode where Jesse is like, you think you killed. He's like, Jesse says to Walt, I think you killed Brock, and he just laughs, and Jesse's like, what the fuck? And at the time, we're like, oh, he's laughing because obviously he didn't do it, but now it's like, oh, he did do it, and he's laughing because, again, the world's coming down crashing on him. It's like a tick. That same laugh comes back, and I wonder if that laugh will come back again, but it's really interesting because it's like him just breaking down. And the cinematography of the scene where at the very last shot of the episode where the camera pans up, we see the crawl space would outline his head, and it sort of pans up in a really, really awesome and clever shot. It's so clever. It's done. The shot is amazing too. But yeah, this scene itself, it's by far my favorite of the show so far. It does such a great job of showing Walt's life just breaking down around him. And it's literally one of the most sort of terrifying scenes in a way, unsettling, because it's like, this is just like a man breaking down, and it's almost like tragic to see, but it's also at the same time really funny, and not in a way that is laugh in a happy way, laugh in an uncomfortable and should I be laughing way. The show definitely embraces sort of dark humor, and where it's like, should I be laughing right now? I'm laughing, but I don't want to be laughing. And this is the scene. I was laughing along with Walt. I'm like, this is insane. I was laughing, and I'm like, I need to stop. I can't be. This is not all right. Why am I laughing? I shouldn't be laughing. And that's just such amazing writing, directing, show running. It's done so well, and the tone is just set so well. And I think this scene is going to be one of the scenes I look back at, and maybe I'll do a whole video just on this scene because it's so. Oh man, there's so much to analyze here, and definitely feels like this is a turning point, because after the show, Walt murdering a child, trying to kill a child almost, at least trying to harm him. Last season he was against that extremely, and now he's willing to do that if it means to stay afloat and to keep that relationship with Jesse that he saw floating away. And that crawl space scene, I think, is a transition between his old self and his new self. The final straw. I mean, the transition, it's not like it just went like out of nowhere. It's been building up. But I think the crawl space is the climax, not only of Walt's sort of character arc, but of the show. I think that the client, for me, the show is definitely split up into 3 acts. I feel like the first season was 1 act, and then I felt like the season 3 and then up to here was the second act. This is the closing of the second act. And now I think that this is going to be the start of the third act, the last season. I think it's going to be the beginning of the end of season 4, and then the rest of season 5. So, this scene, again, my favorite scene of the show, and definitely probably in the best part of the show. I mean, overall, my initial reaction to Breaking Bad season 4 is, I think it's the best season so far. It's close with season 3. It definitely has my favorite scene in the whole show, probably the best scene. It probably has some of the best character moments. It's probably the most fleshed out and thought out and developed seasons of all of them. And it's probably my favorite. Yeah, it's my favorite. 10 out of 10. I'm not joking. 10 out of 10. Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't go so in depth in this video. It's not even because I didn't like it. It's because I did like it. This is so in depth. And I guess now is a good time to sort of talk about these videos, because this is obviously the 4th video. You can go check out season 1, 2, and 3. My first sort of reaction, my first sort of thoughts and review from a first time viewer. But season 5 is actually going to be split up into 2 videos. It's the last season, so I want to do more of these videos, obviously. So what I've been told is season 3. What I've been told is season 5 is 16 episodes long, and they were released 8 episodes at a time. Like the first 8 episodes were released, and then there was a break. Like I think it was like a year, and then the last 8 episodes were released. So I am going to be reviewing season 5 in the 2 parts. So my first part will be the review of the first 8 episodes, which I'll probably go much more in depth, much more easier to talk about 8 episodes than 13. And then I will be talking about my final 8 episodes of the show. And then I plan to do an entire series review, talking about the entire series from season 1 to season 5. And I plan to include some people, some friends, maybe some family, and perhaps some of you. If you want to be in this video, this overall series video, all you need to do is comment below and say, hey, I'm interested. I'll send you a message. YouTube, I guess. Can I say a message on YouTube? You know what? I'll reply to your comment. I will give you a link or give you somewhere to send me a message. Maybe my Discord. You can send me a message and we will talk about planning that. I'll have a conversation with you before you're in the video just to make sure you know what you're talking about. I don't necessarily am saying you need to know every single scene of Breaking Bad, but to prove that you've seen it. And then you can be in the video. We'll have a Discord talk. You, me, and a bunch of other people. We'll sit down and we'll talk about what we liked and what we didn't like about Breaking Bad. So if you want to be in this video, please let me know now. I'll also mention this in the next 2 videos, so don't worry. If you forget, you can watch the other videos, subscribe to me, and then check those out when they come out. The first part of season 5 should probably be out in maybe a month, maybe like early January, probably. And then the last part will probably be late January-ish, maybe early February, but probably late January. Both parts should be out. And then the overall discussion will probably be in February. And I started the show in August, so it'd be like August to February or January would sort of be my timeline that I watch this show. So we'll have like a really cool conversation. It should be fun. And I think there we'll be able to do a lot of more in-depth stuff. And that video won't be edited. It will just be like a long discussion, almost like a podcast, sort of. So I'm looking forward to that. So you can expect at least 3 more Breaking Bad videos, despite there only being 1 more season left. And I'm very excited. This video is going to be out probably around, I don't know, well, you can check, if you're seeing it now, you know what day it is, but probably around like the 10th, I would imagine. And I want to say that I probably have already watched, there's a good chance I've already watched the 8 episodes of the first, I've already watched the first half of Breaking Bad season 5. There's a good chance. I'm recording this right now, and I'm probably going to go watch the first episode of season 5. That's actually kind of why I'm doing this video, because I don't want to watch more and then get my thoughts mixed up. So, yeah, I'm addicted to the show. I can't help it. So, sorry about that. But do look forward to those videos, and I do hope you guys take a part in that. And I'll mention that at the beginning of the next video. So, that would be really cool if you guys want to be a part of that. So, yeah. So that's my Breaking Bad Season 4 review. Hope to see you guys around. Of course, follow me on Twitch. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram. Join my Discord. I even have a Snapchat. You can check out the major links down below. And then you have my Twitch page. You can check out all the links you can check out in the tabs in the chat. And obviously, with the holiday setup, we're doing a lot of holiday Christmas streams. So I hope you tune into those. I'm sure you've already seen some holiday videos on this channel. And I hope to see you all around.